Hello, mech fans. This is Duncan Fisher. Hold on firmly to your mana potions, fireballs, and familiars, because you are tuning in to your regularly scheduled episode of the First Circuit Podcast.
Alrighty. Hello and welcome everyone to the First Circuit Podcast, episode number 91,000. Today it's just me and TTB. Say hey, TTB.
Greetings, Mechwarriors. This is TTB speaking. How's it going, everybody?
And today we are going to be covering the patch notes, most prominently, of course, the Dervish, our first impressions of it, the events and sales, and finally, the Battletech update, Urban Warfare. So, TTB, what's your impressions on the Dervish?
Well, the Dervish is not a bad mech, as in it plays well. There's some fun builds that we've tried out on stream. It has these nice weapon bay doors that actually have a different way of opening between Dervish models. If you pay attention to that, some open to the side, some just move up. I think that's a nice touch. The mech itself doesn't look bad. It has this nice little helmet thing on. Camos are nice, but ultimately, anything the Dervish can do, other mechs can do better. So while it's not a bad mech, it's also not an insanely good mech. It's just a solid release that you could question, did we need this mech or not? And I would say, you know what? At this point in time where the game is at, I'm happy for new mechs, so it's nice to have the Dervish in here. It would be even nicer if the more interesting models weren't hidden behind a paywall.
Yeah, I very much agree that it adds very little to the game. There's a huge amount of competition with the Inner Sphere 55 tonners with missiles and energy. There's just so many flavors of missiles and energy. And quirk-wise, at least, a lot of them have much more interesting stuff going on. The Dervish is very conservatively quirked. Its biggest claim to fame, I would say, is somewhat the agility. It is the most agile 55 tonner, or at least if you're comparing to things like the Griffin, the Kintaro, Shadowhawk, etc. It handles a bit better than the Blackjack, a bit like the Centurion, Yenlo Wang kind of levels of things. So it's quite agile on its feet. The only thing is, if you want agility, get the Wolverine. The Wolverine just knocks its pants off. It's like 20% even more agile than the Dervish. The Wolverine has cooldown quirks. It has survival in its CT and other components. Like, I just don't. I am personally, at least, just so underwhelmed by the Dervish. It has plenty of hard points, but a lot of them are stuck in the arms, which are kind of low and prone to getting shot off. So you don't really always want to put stuff in the arms, so you want to just use the torso mounts. But that's also, there's only a couple of torso mounts, and you're just basically playing, well, like a Wolverine. Like, you might as well just be a Wolverine and be more agile with better cooldown quirks in general.
Yeah, or let's say, for example, you want to go brawling and you want to go SRM brawling, even though I know you don't like SRMs as much anymore. But what would you pick in the 55-ton range? Well, honestly, I would pick the Griffin 2N because you can add this in extra protection in terms of ECM on top of you, and you're going to be much safer than any Dervish. Or you could try playing a Trebuchet with MRM configuration. It's going to do the same thing or even better, because it can run the same armaments, but have this 20% missile cooldown, 10% missile cooldown, no, 20% missile cooldown, right?
Yeah. If you're wanting to MRM boat, there is such strong competition in the Trebuchet and the IB4, which have things like 20% cooldown, 20% missile heat, and 10% velocity and survival quirks all over the place.
The IB4.
Those things, yeah.
If I can jump onto the IB4 for a sec here, the IB4 is a perfect example of how much fun it can be, and this is a discussion that Biter and me are having a lot of times, and we always agree on that. The game would be a lot more fun if mechs were more heavily quirked towards their strengths and would have more flavorful quirks. And the IB4 is one of the few remaining mechs that has this kind of stuff in it, and it's just a lot of fun to play.
Quick Draw, Trebuchet 7M, they have very fun, interesting quirks, and they're strong, but they aren't meta-defining or anything like that, anything crazy like that. And they're 5 tons above, 5 tons lower, just much, much better options than taking an MRM Dervish. And if you're taking something like SRMs, I just think take an Assassin, a Griffin. There's so many better SRM options, it feels like, than the Dervish. And if you're crazy enough to want to run the Dervish or like an MPL boat, why aren't you just doing the Wolfhound? Because we have plenty of mechs that still have legacy quirks that are really fun. And why would I choose a really bland, boring mech when there's plenty of fun mechs in the game?
Yes, and also I don't know if you've looked at the Dervish Hero mech quirks, but basically the quirks read as follows: base structure, left leg and right leg +10. That's the quirks on the Hero mech. It's like,
Yeah,
what happened there? PGI ran out of ideas?
They gave the hero slightly better agility. So instead of 43 acceleration, it's got like 48. It's on a similar level to the Hellspawn hero. It still isn't as good as all the Wolverines. And one of the Wolverines, by the way, can take Mask. So if you want an agile 55 tonner, take a Wolverine. Put
And
Mask
drop
in it.
MRMs on top of it, and you're going to have a lot of fun. But yeah, as I'm saying, like if I look at quirks like that, even with the agility, even if the agility was through the roof, I look at the quirks and I go like, yeah, those aren't quirks. Those are fill in the blanks, and then let's wait for a month and see how the players play with it. And then maybe we add some quirks on top of it, because that's been the usual way the PGI handles these new mech releases. They drop them, and then afterwards after a month they look at the data and they decide, okay, what should we do with that? I would love if they had these ideas beforehand and then adapted them. And it's totally fine if a new mech releases and it's a little bit too strong at the beginning. That's totally fine. It happens in all sorts of games. It happens in all sorts of extremely successful games, for example, League of Legends. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. What I would worry about is having the stuff to be too bland, so people go away from it very quickly. And if you look at the Dervish, compared to the other mech releases lately, like let's say the Marauder 2 or the Warhammer 2C, where there were like sometimes 6 or so of them in one match, you look at the Dervish, the most I've gotten to was 2 Dervishes in one match, or 3. So that's a general, like, maybe disinterest now for mech packs. Of course, that can also be coupled with the latest talk that Russ had. So, but that's going too far.
Okay, yeah, there's quite a few things to unpack there, at least. I think obviously the Marauder 2, there's a lot of people playing it because they got it along with the Mechwarrior 5 pre-order. But yeah, the Dervish, even compared to like the Rifleman 2C, is hardly played on release. And at least initial impressions, I don't think are necessarily going to be good. I don't think it's a mech that's going to stick around. Like the Marauder 2, lots of people were playing it, but it was quirked so conservatively, there was no point in playing it. It has worse hard points than other 100-tonners. It really needs help in quirk-wise.
It's basically disappeared, right?
Yeah, it's more or less disappeared, except the missile variant when there's an event going on where you need to do missile stuff.
Or when TTB is playing it. If you ever see a Marauder 4 HP walking towards you and you see lots of streaks, run.
But yeah, there's just, I mean, some mechs like that are actually halfway decently quirked, like the Charger and Hatamoto Chi. They're in the odd 80-tonner category that in a sphere side that just doesn't see play anyway, normally. So yeah, I think that's very much the reason why PGI stopped doing these mech packs. Is just partly, the game is already so saturated with mechs that's really hard to add anything new on, but also their design decisions with every new mech pack is like, oh hey, I could get this new Inner Sphere 40-tonner. It's going to come out with like 10% flamer range and 3 machine guns that fire 10% faster. I'm gonna dominate the game. It's like, oh wait, no, it's a Vulcan. It's
exactly
those
that.
underwhelming quirks are not why you take a Vulcan.
No, exactly. Take the Vulcan because you can drive people crazy because they're trying to hit you, but you're twisting and jumping and hopping around so crazily that it's almost impossible to do so.
Yeah, I mean, that one at least has such a strong agility quirk that it actually is able to evade with its weird shape. But yeah, on average, at least with their very conservative quirks and whatnot, it just, oh look, there's a new mech pack, and it's going to be another sucky mech that is inferior to older legacy mechs that weren't too horribly crippled by PGI's nerfs.
Yeah, I mean, let's be fair though. There have been a few mech releases in the past where they really nailed it and they really made fun mechs to play. The Vulcan would be one. The Vapor Eagle stands out to me big time. Mad Cat 2 stands out to me big time. I guess there's quite a handful of mechs in there where you go like, okay, you know what? These mechs feel good. But there's also, on the opposite side, a lot of mechs that don't feel that good, and it's confirmed by the fact that you just don't see him as much on the battlefield, if you even see him at all. And I think for the Hatamoto Chi and for the Charger, the smart thing to do for PGI, which they unfortunately didn't do, was to include them in the mech sale. But they didn't. They weren't on sale, unfortunately, because they came off the rotation or whatnot at that time. So I would love to see them jump into the mech sale on these mechs on a later date, because I feel that will give us more of these mechs running around, because the Charger and the Hatamoto Chi are interesting mechs. They're not like AAA level kind of mechs, but they're fun to play, and I would like to see more of them.
Yeah. But to at least finish up on the Dervish, I think it's an okay mech. It's not terrible. It doesn't have super bad hard points locations or anything like that. You can do a fair, as you mentioned at the beginning, a lot of fairly solid builds. It just doesn't have any spice to bring it alive.
Yeah, it's like your fries with tomato ketchup. There's nothing wrong with it, but there's also nothing crazy going on, so you might not get seconds or thirds.
Well, it's just fries. There's no ketchup. There's no extra, things to complement it.
Don't worry, guys. It's MWO. The salt will always be plenty.
All right, that at least covers mostly our thoughts on the Dervish. We should move on to the patch notes.
Let's do it.
And neither of us are big faction play people, but I think at least just to reiterate from last week, I'm really liking the changes they're doing in faction play, actually allowing players to switch between factions, allowing players to actually see the player distribution between the different factions. Means that for those who are still actually playing the mode, they're able to balance out the player base, so that you're not stuck with 24 people one side, 2 on the other. Which was an absolute nightmare. Other little quality of life improvements is removing that annoying beeping timer and making it so that it only flashes at the bottom when it actually finds you a match, rather than every single time the timer reaches down to 0. So matchmaking for faction warfare is a lot less tedious and annoying than it used to be, which is pretty good after the huge shit show that was last month's patch.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're clearly seeing that they're making some progress here, which is a good thing. Let's give them credit where credit is deserved. I do not know how many people of the whole player population actually play faction play. I hope it's a lot. I hope it's more than 50% to justify all these improvements and the development time going into this, as opposed to the development timing going into refining and improving the core game and quick play. But we can only assume that PGI has had a look at their numbers and came to the conclusion that this is the best way to spend their resources right now. So for everybody who likes faction play, and maybe I'm gonna check that at some point as well, play a little bit more of that. I think these changes are looking like they're going into the right direction, but of course only time will tell just for us to see how far these changes will be going, and how fun ultimately and how good the experience will be in the end.
On the context of about the player numbers, when PGI did that update stream with Russ, he talked about in the past more than 50% of the player base used to do faction warfare, and their hopes is to by reworking on the mode that it can once again become the most popular mode. As it currently stands, though, it is actually not the most populous mode, and that it isn't necessarily the best use of resources. And at least given last month's patch, all they did was really mess up faction play rather than give it meaningful improvements, just like simple things like changing spawn locations and other things that actually impacts the games you have when doing faction play.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say, and I don't think I'm overreaching here if I state that PGI has done some really good things in the past, but they've also shown that they like to do things too quickly, either not spend enough time reiterating and quality checking internally, or just throwing stuff out without checking it anyways. And then having to redo it again. And I think that's not something that you would expect from a company to do, but PGI just does it over and over again. So what I would like them to do is to review their stuff a little bit more and longer internally before they push it out to the public in order to avoid these things. My most famous example here is the brightness and the haze on Hibernal Rift. I mean, how do you not notice that, guys? That's just a huge blunder, and it just throws a lot of things into question. Nobody questions PGI's drive and PGI's motivation to deliver a good game, but the execution sometimes is just really, really bad, and that's something that they hopefully will be able to change with MW5, and hopefully some of that can then go back towards MWO or the successor to that game. But yeah, long story short, we'll have to see what happens with the faction play. I hope it's getting reinvigorated. Maybe they will get some of the old players to come back and then play it again, and it ultimately will be better for everybody because the more players the game has, the better, right? But yeah, we'll see.
Well, we have to wait and see. I think my issue, well, we've touched on this plenty of times on the First Circuit podcast, but PGI often seems to have their eyes on the horizon rather than what's immediately in front of them and fixing the smaller details. So PGI will often look to the horizon and say, "Oh, wouldn't it be great if there was scouting?" That's kind of a neat idea. It's just there isn't the player base for scouting, and in the end people weren't really interested in it, and with their changes they've now deleted scouting, more or less. They look to the horizon and they say, it would be really cool if we had Solaris game mode, and they put a lot of time and effort into that, and I don't think that many people are playing Solaris anymore. Like people played it a bit when it came out, and it really quickly dropped off afterwards. And PGI with this faction and PGI with this faction warfare change are like, everyone's been talking about, we want story in our faction play stuff, so we're going to introduce a story, and they implement it and they completely screw up the simple just click the button and you're searching for 4v4 invasion modes.
Yeah, and I think that also happened to some of the other game modes that we got, for example, famously Escort, but which is gone now, or Incursion, which is still here for whatever reason.
Yep.
Don't get me wrong, these were all interesting ideas, but they didn't touch onto the core problems, and players just didn't like it. And I think an easier way to deal with this, as other developers do it, is they incorporate the community a lot more in the whole process. They ask the community what they want to have, and then they build what the community is looking for. And I don't see this happening here too much. Again, I don't want to bash on PGI in any way or form. They're making a game that, with all its problems, is a game that we are still enjoying, and we're hoping that we'll see some further refinements and further improvements. But yeah, that's just some glaring stuff that just shouldn't happen and needs to be avoided. Okay.
Yeah, I would just, to complete my point though, at least, would be they stare into the horizon, they implement these things, but the credit to them is that they then stop staring at the horizon and fix the problems they implemented. So, when they implemented the changes for faction play, they've now made it so you can switch sides, can see player distribution, all that stuff. Like, they have actually gone back and actually looked into the black box and fixed it. When they implemented Hibernal Rift, they were staring into the sky and saying, "Oh, look, a new map." But people complained about it, they listened, and they actually sat down and fixed it. So it's a lot better than them always looking into the sky. They're always late to fixing the game, but they at least do fix the problems they create.
It sounds a little yes, but I mean the little evil voice in my head wants to say that it's nice that it's happening like that, but done in a proper way, it should never come to this point. And that is something that PGI has to work out internally, and that's their problem and their job to fix. Because for us, it's a player base.
We should skip all the dreaming. Yeah, all the dreaming and go straight to the fixing.
Yeah, maybe, but like it's a little bit of dreaming is absolutely fine. But for us as the player base, like what we want and what we deserve is a really good product that is a lot of fun to play and that keeps us coming back and keeps us invested into the game and also makes us wanting to spend money and buy your stuff, PGI. Yeah? Makes us want to spend money on colors and decals and whatnot. Maybe decals, maybe something we could talk about in the later episode sometime. But long story short, we can only look at the end product, and we can't make the game for them. It's up to them to do that, and they just need to get their shit together sometimes a little bit better, because they've proven in isolated cases, here and there, that they can do a fantastic job. It's just not happening enough.
All right. Shall we move on to the other little bits and pieces they implemented in the patch notes?
Yeah, let's move
They've
to
done
tuning and
some-
value changes.
Yep. LBX 2 and 5 spreads has been slightly reduced. I
Big whoop.
hardly noticed the difference.
Yeah, I mean it's something that I was like, yeah, okay, so it sounds good on paper, but like these changes are so minuscule. Yeah, it's like forget about it.
Yep, just ignore that. It's hardly worth printing the explanation or letting people know. ATMs. Now this was actually a bit of a change. They're reducing the 3 damage zone and its 3 damage zone drop off by 45 meters.
Which sounds good on paper, but if you take extended range, you'll still have it at 270. So literally nothing changes. I think that ATM's extremely
that's all.
powerful, especially on some focused ATM boats. Like for example, the Vapor Eagle would be a prime example for mech that can do a hell of a lot of damage while still being very mobile. So I think it is a correct change that they made. What I'm finding a little bit weird is that they increased the damage on the extended range to 1.2 per missile. So that means that an ATM 12, for example, is comparable to a LRM 15 and does almost the same amount of damage, has a better flight path, and has this increased damage the closer you get to your target, and has more range than the LRM 15. Like we are living in a weird world right now where the only thing where LRMs are better right now is basically indirect fire. Other than that, ATMs beat it.
There are naturally, at least for clans, that ATM 12 weighs 7 tons. The LRM 15 weighs 3.5 tons.
That's true.
And damage per ton as well. It's what's it? 105. Like base, it's a lot less damage per ton for ATM ammo. So you don't really want to use it at long range, even with this buff. Like it's slightly less
absolutely.
sucky, but it still really sucks. Like
Yeah,
you
you
are
don't
still,
want to use it. Yeah.
Instead of doing 33%, you're doing 35, 37% of the damage you normally would be doing. And at that point, you're still really not, it's really not worth your time.
Yeah, but if you look at the way the missiles have been used in the past few months, I would actually say that ATMs have definitely become the norm, and LRMs have moved a little bit to the sidelines. And especially in that closer range zone, in that sweet spot that I like to learn. Like I used to run LRM mechs and run them at closer ranges, like 200, 300 meters LRMing, and like ATMs just beat LRMs out of the just destroy LRMs at that range because they're doing 3 times as much. Well, 3 times, actually 3 times the base damage, right? So
it's a bit hard to compare, but they feel a lot better to use because clan LRMs have a huge duration. Like in clan LRM 20 takes a whole second for it to actually fire off its missiles. With an ATM 12, it takes 0.3 of a second. And we're comparing largest launcher to largest launcher.
Yeah, I mean, a fun comparison would be to just have a mech, like an assault mech or whatnot, stand at, let's say, 250 meters or 220 meters, and then you do a full volley with LRM 80, and then you do a full volley with ATM 48, and see what happens. Spoiler alert, ATM 48 does almost double damage than the LRM 80. There, I said it. But yeah, so I think those are okay changes. I don't think they needed the extra damage for the extended range because, in my opinion, the ATMs should not be that good at too long ranges. The fact that they can fly further than LRMs to me is just ridiculous.
It's a really tricky thing. At least I understand the reasoning of ATMs are supposed to be an advanced missile system, and they should therefore actually be really good at long range as well. But you're putting so much tonnage into these advanced missiles, they are only really best used at that close range bracket where you get huge raw damage amounts. Whereas at extreme range, you have a low ammo per ton, you have a lot of tonnage invested into relatively few tubes, it just doesn't make sense in the extreme ranges. But the thing is, at extremer ranges, you are going to have a lot more difficulty keeping and holding locks for long enough for the missiles to get there, which is why at least super long range LRMing and ATMing has always been kind of mediocre for the most part. Like, you may have had enough experience with this TTP, but I'm sure I've seen plenty of like AC2 mechs out trading LRM builds, because the LRMs
yes.
or ATMs, they only actually reach 900 meters, or even ATMs 1000 meters, but their damage is so low compared to that focused fire of AC2s.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. AC2 damage, or like especially like clan AC2 with all the range nodes and whatever, their ideal range is 1000. They will still do like a good amount of damage at 1500. So yeah, don't try to go on a fight contest with Lerms against that. You're going to lose big time.
Mm-hmm. I'd say the ATMs have always been actually quite strong, but people often took the other weapons because they were pretty potent in their own respects, like Shrieks or SRMs. But when PGI tried to help LRMs, they just did a huge nerf to all missile weapons except for ATMs for some arbitrary reason. And now, because ATMs are the only ones that haven't been arbitrarily nerfed for no reason, they are also being nerfed down to the new lower level. Just it makes sense. It is the outstanding weapon system, the missile weapon system, but that's only because it wasn't the one that wasn't nerfed.
Yeah, and
compared to the
also
others.
if you look at the LRM changes with the direct fire versus indirect fire, which on paper sounds good and which is a good change, the problem is it is not a reliable system. When I've been trying to play, for example, a Lerm Bloodasp, which is a fun thing to play, like Lerm 95 Bloodasp. It's really ridiculous. But what I found quite a lot of times is that the missiles are just plain stupid. You've got a direct line of fire, it works. You don't have a direct line of fire anymore. The missiles will sometimes still try to do that direct line of fire instead of going indirectly, or you're trying to fire at something that is below your elevation. They will try to go directly as opposed to curving up first and then hitting the target, because otherwise it would just go to the ground. So the way the system is implemented is, for lack of a better term, because I'm German, that means I can be very crass, half-assed.
It's without the player having direct control, it lacks consistency. Like if you with the whole long duration of clan LRM, you start firing the LRM 20, it is direct, but the travel time and the fact the enemy hides behind cover means you're spending a second firing directly at the target who's no longer direct, wasting the entire volley. Whereas if you had fired an indirect volley the entire time, it would have arced over, you keep your lock, and it would have all hit the target. So
Yeah.
before, you would have got 20 damage, assuming there's no AMS around, and now you got 0 damage on target because of the quote-unquote improved arc.
Yeah, the thing is though, it also seems to have problems with ramps on certain maps where the ramps are not properly counted as indirect fire. And again, like if the target is slightly below you in elevation, or even further below you in elevation, the curve up just doesn't happen. All the missiles try to go direct, and that's a huge problem. So, long story short, and thank you for that eloquent words and the explanation. But it all boils down to my word, half-assed. So yeah, I would like to see some more tweaking on that. I like the direct fire of LRMs, don't get me wrong. That is a really good change. It just needs to be more consistent, as Spider said. And maybe they could do it in a way that you can select actively between direct and indirect fire. That would be the dream. Because I would be firing indirectly all the time. All locks for LRM.
Yeah. The issue I have with the ATMs is, at least I don't know how good they are actually on, in game, practically speaking, whether they are overpowered or underpowered. All I can say is, at least I felt like they were a fair enough weapon system. They did a crazy amount of damage, but they required a lot of investment to equip. They are somewhat vulnerable to AMS, though BGI for some reason gave them lots of health.
and ECM.
Yeah.
ECM, like
ECM
the
really
bane
screws them
of
over.
these weapon systems is a light mech with ECM or stealth just standing next to them and go like, yo. I mean, you can still fire them directly, but without lock, and that can work, yes. But there are some counters to that, but of course, in quick play, you're not going to see them, most likely.
Yeah. One thing, at least, about the range brackets, I think for the most part, you would I go within 360 meters range, and I just fire off my ATMs at streaks, and they do decent damage. That's
Yeah.
basically how they use them. PGI's reasoning of, oh, people have to remember the exact plateauing. It's like, no. In fact, I have to keep telling people what the range brackets are because a lot of people do not remember the range brackets. They aren't very clearly marked in tooltips in game. And the brackets aren't, they're not huge, they're not radical jumps. It's not like, in the Sphere LRMs where you're doing perfect damage and then suddenly 0.
Yep.
You're not doing 3 and then suddenly 2. There is actually a drop off window. So even if currently you're firing at 250, 260 meters range or whatever, you're doing like 2.5 damage per missile. And I'm not counting every point of a damage of missile. I'm in range, I'm going to fire the ATMs and do decent damage. That's how they work.
Especially since you're moving, the enemy is moving, you will be in perfect range, and then you won't be in perfect range, and then you will be in perfect range again. Like, there's so much stuff happening here, and there will be lots of spreadsheet warriors who will be telling you, oh, you need to do it this way or that way. The reality of things to everybody listening, and my number one tip to all players in MWO is just go with good old Lord Dark Helmet. Keep firing, assholes. That's the most important thing that you can do. Don't worry about the ranges too much. Of course, one exception, and that is the 130 meter border, not 120, 130, because of lag and everything. Go with 130 instead of 120. That's the minimum range for these. Yep. But other than that, just shoot them. Just shoot them. If you have a clear line of sight, just shoot them. Don't wait until you get to that perfect range and your target is now behind cover.
Yeah, I usually say 120 just because the issue is it depends how far forward your missile arms are compared to your cockpit. If you're holding your arms really far forward, they actually are traveling. If you're at 120 meters, they are actually traveling 110, and therefore it's within minimum range, etc., etc. But at least I still say just 120 because you might still do the damage, and you might as well fire before they are within range. Just get that damage out, or try to.
Or you could use your 10,000 backup weapons, or you could just have teammates around that deal with it, but that is the dream.
Yeah. Still, it just like the LBX weapon changes, it's mostly a token change. I think the weapon system will function mostly the same. I don't really agree much with their reasoning for it. I don't think it makes much sense to nerf the only missile weapon system that hasn't recently got a nerf for no reason. But at least it brings them into line with the other poor missile weapons that PGI has a hatred towards.
That's a good point. Speaking about changes you don't really notice, how about we talk about the Banshee changes?
A little bit more CT armor. That's nice.
And mobility.
Yep. The Siren, the Banshee Solaris hero, is getting an extra 5% heat. This is, oddly enough, one of the biggest and most impactful quirk changes in the entire patch, which sadly is saying something.
Yeah, like for the Siren, for example, what I would have loved to see is 20% missile cooldown, because it can run so nice MRM builds, for example, and that would be something where you could go in and say, okay, you know what, I'm gonna run a giant walking CT, but it's gonna be impactful. But without that,
my contention would be that that missile hardpoint is really high and wide. So it has a lot of issues with convergence.
Yep.
The cooldown isn't necessarily the issue. The issue is that it just splatters all over the place and it's really hard to lead your target. So velocity, like 25% more velocity, something good like that, would allow the weapon to become consistent. And even if you're throwing something else like an LRM-20 on it, the LRM-20 flying very quickly to target would mean it's not getting shot down by LRMs. So more cooldown, that's good as well. But I would really like velocity to actually make it worth taking that missile hardpoint, because my current build with it uses 3 LPL and an LB-20. It would not benefit at all from...
Yep.
It completely ignores the mostly worthless missile hardpoint. That was at least my determination after playing it for so long. I was like, I'm going to play a one-sided build, and I'm going to use pinpoint damage at 360 meters range that reliably hits its target.
Yeah. As you said, either go for better efficiency with your volleys or go for more volleys. But as we said, the quirks should be something that is fun and unique towards the mech, and a 5% or 10% increase, just as in the skill tree, you're not going to notice a 0.x% better heat diffusion. You're not going to notice a 0.x% cooldown. It's just the fact of the matter that you add a lot of these individually that you get to any meaningful values. And the same thing goes for mech quirks. If they don't use big values, and I'm talking 20%, 30%, you're hardly going to notice. And that makes quirks ultimately bland for most mechs. And that's why some of the mechs that have intensive quirks feel so good.
The Banshee heroes have always had really terrible hardpoints, and whilst they have okay quirks, they have never really been exceptional. And even if you gave them exceptional quirks, they would only become average.
Yeah, which means that's a good argument for giving them really good quirks.
Yep. We were discussing a little bit before the podcast. I was talking about the Vindicator. Had really good survival, weapon cooldown quirks, and agility, like 90% agility. And PGI removes 90% of its agility. They remove all its weapon quirks, and it still does better just because skill tree meant survival was increased by 20% on top of what you already had. Just made them so much more tanky. Like, the survival was the rate determining factor. You could give the mechs double agility, and they would still actually, it hardly had an impact.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Atlases has also got their own little boost to mobility. That's okay.
Yeah, you know what? A
Kodiak's-
little bit more mobile Atlas is fine by me. I would like to see one thing that they haven't done in years, and that is give the boar's head armor instead of structure.
Mhm.
Because I think it sorely needs it. The boar's head requires you to do some kind of weird builds, and I think like having high mobility, very nice, but what the boar's head needs is armor. It needs to have the stuff on top before its internals get crit out.
I think a whole bunch of Atlases should just have their structure turned into armor. The Atlas S, the Atlas DDC, just make them all have armor.
Yep, exactly. It wouldn't be a huge problem. And the Atlas, being supposed to be the tankiest mech out there, it should have insane armor.
And all of them have something like 25% crit chance reduction rather than just a couple of them. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Make it consistent, across all the different variants.
Speaking about consistency, there are changes to the Kodiak. And there is one notable model that did not get any changes. That's the Kodiak 3. What's your take on that?
Yeah, that's always been the strongest variant. I would say, in my personal opinion, like a lot of the Kodiak variants have hard points that aren't that impressive. I do like the Kodiak. I think it's the 5 because it has a lot of energy hard points, and that you can do glowy fists in it, and it's hilarious. But it's just it doesn't have very, if any, interesting quirks to really make it stand out. And it's a mech that really needs to stand out because, glowy fist is a funny gimmick, but it's also not a very effective gimmick. And as it stands, it's got basically nothing. There's the Kodiak 4. They're giving it some token LRM quirks. LRM spread -5%, missile spread 10%. So it's got 2 missile hard points. If you take LRM 20s, 2 LRM 20s in the arms, they have 15% missile spread and 10% velocity. Is that really the reason to take the Kodiak 4? Is that something that really makes me want to buy it? No, not at all.
Actually, it has a unique quirk. It's not LRM spread. It's LRM spread. Yeah, that's the typo in there in the patch notes. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Sporad, you say? Now that is interesting. I want to see how Sporad is implemented in the game. But yeah, I think a lot of the Kodiak 3 has good hard points, and therefore at least it should be taken as the baseline Kodiak, and all the others should be an upgrade on that baseline, given interesting quirks and agility and things like that to really make them stand out. So a clear, obvious example in my mind is something like the Spirit Bear. It's the Kodiak with Mask. Give it exceptional agility. This will be the incredibly agile and fast 100-tonner. That would be fun. And in this patch, they say they give it an agility increase, but it's very, very slight, if not almost completely imperceptible changes to the Spirit Bear's agility.
Yeah, and if you like, one of my first videos was an Ace of Spades 9-kill video in the Spirit Bear, and the mech was fast and agile. It wasn't the most highly armored mech, it wasn't the toughest assault out there,
Yep.
but it was very fast and agile, and that was what made it be so amazing. And after the engine desync, do you see Spirit Bears? Do you see much Kodiaks running around? No, they've basically vanished. And so these changes right here, again, they're just minor changes. I don't think that they will revitalize the Kodiak, which is really, really sad. But long story short, the Kodiak is just in its current form, yeah, just getting outclassed in every way by the Mad Cat.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I think I very much agree with that. That the Kodiak 3 used to be, sort of dominating the meta, but the Mancat Mark 2 is very much taking that spot. It does need help. It's not getting help, and the other variants have needed help this entire time because they've never really been played that much, and they just never have gotten it.
So long story short, buff the Kodiak, please. It deserves to make a return. It's one of the few big ass clan mechs.
I think it's my summary for this whole thing, at least, we're very much on the same page that we want to see fun and interesting quirks and stats given to mechs that really need it, and that these tiny token little changes are nice, but they do not do anything really to change the balance of the game. The changes, the tiny 0.75 increase to the Kodiak's deceleration speed hasn't changed how much people really feel when playing the Kodiak and the Spirit Bear, and how much they will want to play the Spirit Bear.
Yep.
If you ask most people what was the deceleration before and after, and what was the change, if I doubt most people, if anyone almost, would be able to tell you the numbers, because the numbers are so inconsequential, nobody cares.
Yeah. It's all about how the mech feels and how it handles in your hands. And sadly, if I jump into a Kodiak, or if I jump into a Kodiak 3 or a Spirit Bear, it feels like I'm playing like, well, I don't know, Drug Addled or something. Everything just seems to move at a slower pace. Right, so as we said, long story short, changes need to be impactful, and I think it also but it's foreshadowed in the way the skill tree was designed. I'm going on a tangent here, just a few seconds here. The skill tree in itself was meant to be giving people more customization options, which is a good thing. However, the way the skill tree was built is that you're adding all these little minuscule bonuses to get something useful. So in the end, the skill tree could have been 5 choices per subcategory, 5 choices for firepower, 5 choices for armor, and so on. And each of them could have been one meaningful thing, and you could select 3 out of 5 or something, instead of having huge trees where you have all these little minuscule changes. That is just something that doesn't feel good, and it's always the same thing. So less and more impactful is more and feels better.
I wouldn't necessarily always use the skill tree as the example for that personally. I think it is it's a different approach, but the changes in the end are quite impactful. The issue is, I think, people often gravitate towards certain trees, though, because some, particularly things like jump jets, are almost never spec'd into, because they require a lot of nodes, like 20 nodes. That's enough to get like operations tree, and at the end of the day, you're getting, things like 12% lift speed, minor things like vectoring or heat shielding. It just it doesn't feel quite a few of the trees do not feel impactful, and after so long with the skill tree having been implemented, there are still a lot of issues, like with operations tree not properly implementing cool run on heat containment. That was a problem even before they implemented the new skill tree, and they still haven't fixed those problems.
Yep.
Let's get cracking just quickly on the events and sales. Biggest thing, I think, at least, is what the Weekend Warriors event. Have you been doing any of that?
Well, I've been doing a little bit of that by accident, but still doing the IanCloud challenge. But I mean, the Weekend Warrior event, to me, the challenges themselves, the parts in there, do ballistic damage, do missile damage, do energy damage, that's all good and fine. Do kills or KMDDs, that's all fine. Match score accumulated, also fine, because it also helps a little bit the newer or less experienced players, because you just have to play a lot and it's going to accumulate over time. What I don't like as much are the rewards. I think the credit rewards are fine, but the GXP rewards, and especially the match score rewards, you get like 1 day premium time, 3 days premium time, 7 days premium time. I mean, I get it for free-to-play players that might be interesting, but for me as a veteran and a lot of other people that have bought mech packs in the past, we've got premium time saved up until the end of time, until Judgment Day. So I would like to see them either implement a system where basically, if you have premium time, you get something else, but that would require, dev time, whatnot, so we're not going to get that, or make these rewards more meaningful. I would like to see more Warhorns and stuff like that. It's like fun stuff that people really care about, as opposed to, oh yeah, just have premium time, oh yeah, just have some general GXP.
Yeah, this event is a little stingy in rewards. I like the requirements, nice and simple. I personally, even though, yeah, I'm in the same boat, I don't need the premium time. I think it does really help, at least back in my old days when I was free to play. Before I got mech packs, premium time was always a great reward, and they've been holding off on it for quite some time, so I'm glad to see premium time return. I always think at least every event should have premium time as a simple, easy reward to start with. So if it's a weekend event, it's like play a match, get 3 days premium time. So therefore you have premium time for the entire event. Something simple like that.
No, that could be nice, but again, like I would like to see like a choice maybe, because they've had choice systems in the past where you could choose between different mechs you wanted or between different colors you wanted. Maybe a choice system that says, okay, you either get 7 days premium time or you get, I don't know, 100 MC or whatever.
Yeah, I don't have any numbers, but the thing with the choice event, the choices is you have to do it through the website. And the convenience of at least the current event system is that people can do it in game, and therefore it's a lot more convenient just to check your progress in game rather than having to open up the site, log into the site, go to the event page, scroll down, and then read your progress and clicking the redeem button or clicking the going through the options and picking that one.
Yeah, I mean, long story short is I don't think it's a bad event. I think the stuff in there is solid. I just would like to see different rewards. But that's coming from a player who's been playing the game for a while. For the new players, it might be great to have this premium time in there. But for everybody who's got banked premium time, like long story short, we will just look. I just look at that and I go like, yeah, that's not a reward. Yeah. That's just bullshit.
GXP is always the least interesting reward, I think. Like for me, the things that get me coming to an event is the MC rewards and Warhorns.
Yep.
Warhorns are always appreciated, I think, in MC as well, because that allows you to save up and buy a hero or mech base in the future.
Yeah, exactly. Like especially Warhorns. I think the Warhorns are one of the shining parts of MWO, where they've done a really good job of most of them, and they're interesting and fun. Or maybe more bolt-ons. That could also be an option. They get more get bolt-ons of your choice or whatever. But yeah, I like that they are having more events and that they are changing around what the events look like. I just hope they don't bring as many do X amount of damage with weapon system 1 and then weapon system 2 and weapon system 3, because that just leads to all the people that have no clue what they're doing to run insanely bad builds trying to do 10 challenges at the same time. So I like it more if they have it consistent, just say like do X amount of damage with ballistics or do just X amount of damage in general, and have that be cumulative, because that leads to people playing good mechs and fun mechs as opposed to playing brain dead sort of combinations just to try and get this stuff faster.
All right, cracking along, we also have, as always, a new mech pack, a Dervish challenge event. These are always, I think, we've been speaking for a while that these are always quite underwhelming. It's 1,000. Like if you just get the standard pack, all you have is do 1,000 damage with each variant, and you get like 1 million C-bills. I think 3 million C-bills.
Yeah, it's 3 million C-bills. Yep.
Yeah, it's nice. It helps pay back the costs of upgrading the mechs, but only a little bit. And you only get the additional stuff if you buy additional packs. So
here's
Crusader
the thing.
pattern, not worth it. Yeah.
Here's the thing. These mech packs, if they want to make them fun, if they want to make people actually be interested in buying these mech packs, each mech should come with 91 skill points. Then you can get an initial set of skills in this thing without having to buy for it yourself. That's the first thing that should happen, right? It should come with skill points inside.
Yeah, that, or at least plenty of C-bills to help kit them up, particularly like IS if you're buying double heat sinks.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if the mech comes with standard heat sinks and maybe not no endo or anything. I mean, I get it. You want to customize it. It's fine if that costs money and whatnot. But Yeah, either that or, as I said, just have it come with 91 skill points inside, so you can experience the full flavor immediately instead of having to skill it up like you just bought it from the mech market without any skill points, but you paid your money for it. So again, it's little things that would make this whole experience a lot more fun.
Yep, and there's so many things they could do to make it more interesting. Like if you're getting standard pack, it's a challenge for every different mech. Like particularly if they had interesting quirks, So there's one that actually, to start with, its stock loadout has a lot of MRMs, and that would cause ghost heat and MWO. It should have had like heat scale limit quirk, and its particular challenge should just be do damage with MRMs. That way, you're trying to sell the unique flavors of your mechs, but the thing is, there aren't unique flavors to the mechs, and they aren't selling them to the player base with these challenges.
Well, unfortunately, you're making way too much sense right now. We should probably move to the next topic.
All right, to finish off, at least there is a whole bunch of sales.
Yep, bolt-ons and decals and mech bays and one-shot camos. By the way, mech bays sales are always great. What I always find a little bit cheeky is that for some reason the big mech sale that we've had lately, especially the assault mech sale, which I was most passionate about, was on, and there were no mech bays on sale, so I had to buy mech bays for full price. So this time when the mech bays are on sale, I bought myself a good healthy amount so that I have more space for more mechs. But yeah, it would be nice to have them on sale at the same time as the heroes are on sale as well, because that would encourage people to buy more.
Yeah, you don't want to offer too much all at the same time with sales. Like doing it this way does mean you want your players to constantly be checking in with the sales, because that is something I do at least as well. Is you have to buy the mech bays when they're on sale, and wait until later on there's a hero sale to buy all the heroes.
Yep.
As it is, yeah, it's that's the Weekend Warriors event. It's bolt-ons, decals, one-shot camos, I think. And mech bays. Mech bays is always a good purchase, particularly if you don't have that many to start with. It's always good to expand your library or have that capacity. And the solar-powered sale as well. The mech packs in store, 30% off. I do not advise buying. They're available for C-bills. Do not bother with that, really. But a lot of those mechs are 50% off C-bills in game. Is there any particular mechs you would recommend that are on sale in that?
Well. Vulcan 5T, the Vapor Eagle, basically any variant, but they're all good. Some good champions in there. Hellfire and Roughnecks are interesting, especially the Roughneck hero that was gifted away for loyalty like 2 years ago. The Powerhouse is really, really good. Sunspider Manul is very interesting, the hero mech. Of course, these are only available the heroes are only available for MC, but those are good investments for your MC. The Fafnir Wrath is a great mech. Fafnir has a lot of really good mechs that are definitely worth buying. The combination of ECM and the high damage, high impact weaponry on the Fafnir makes it a great combination. And Blood Asp is Blood Asp. It's a really, really good mech, but Daka variants are really nice. And the Rancor hero mech is also a fun mech to play. So, lots of good choices here.
I'd have the same contentions I have with your points like you made in your hero recommendation sale. I would say the Blood Asp, a big selling point is the ECM variants, not the hero, which can't take ECM in the CT. And the Sunspider, I'd say the one that they gave away for free has some really good quirks for your UAC 10 and ERPPC with its set of 8, whereas the manual just has the C-bill bonus.
Yeah, but the Blood Asp hero mech can do double ATM 12 and 5 medium pulse lasers. That's all you need. Or was it 6 medium pulses, 5 medium pulses? I don't remember. Long story short, you can do a hell of amount of damage with that thing. So it's a nice variant.
You're not using that. You're not using that CT missile hard point.
Yeah, but you're using the what's it called? You're using the Rancor side torsos, and if you don't have the Rancor, you can't use those side torsos. You can't play this specific build. Aha!
I just use LRMs in the arms.
Speaking about the side torsos or the omnipods of hero mechs, I find it isn't that a little bit weird that you can only buy, like, can you only use one of them? Like, you can't buy additional omnipods. You always have just this one thing lying around.
Yeah, you have to buy additional heroes to acquire additional hero omnipods.
Yeah, that makes no sense whatsoever. It's just stupid, and they should change that. it would be a quality of life change, because some of the hero mechs you only buy because they have one specific omnipod that you want, and you should be able to use that for the other mechs, and just buy it instead of directly through the mech lab, instead of forcing you to buy another hero mech so that you can have a secondary omnipod from that hero to put onto a different mech. That's just not a good quality of life experience.
Yeah, it would be nice that it would be great quality of life improvement for players that they, once they've gone through that paywall, they have access to its unique hard points. Because the heroes usually only have a couple of unique hard points and sounding things to them. But
okay, so that's all on the sale, right?
I think so. So as usual, at least they are doing a whole bunch of different sales. At least this time there are mech bays and Seabull variants off, so you can get both at the same time. And it's all right. And I really like they improved the Weekend Warrior event. It used to be an initial implementation was sort of each event had like a 2 or 3 day window, so you had to always be on the right day to choose the right sales. And they changed it so it just basically, you know what, all 3 are active throughout the whole week. And I was like, thank you very much. That makes my life a whole lot simpler.
Yes, absolutely. It makes life a lot simpler because you don't have to be online at certain days. You can just play the game, and it's fun. And I wish they would never bring back these events where you have to be playing a certain thing at a certain day, because these are just hugely stressful. And if you miss out, you feel like you're missing out. So I think the way that they're going with that, with having a clear time window and everything is available at the same time, that's the correct way to do it. And I would hope they continue that way.
Yep. Just list the things that are on sale, get get straight to the point rather than having all of it cluttered up with, well, it starts at this time code, and it ends at this time. It adds so much more clutter to the sales. Let's move on to our next big topic for this week's podcast. Finally, the Battletech update, Urban Warfare.
No Urbies in Urban Warfare, though. We get 2 new mechs, if I'm correct. We get the Raven, we get the, what's it, the Incubus? No, not the Incubus, the other one. Javelin, yeah. The tiny mechs that are usually heavy gauss. So, yeah, both are interesting additions. I haven't played them in my lances yet because my campaign is too far along currently. But there are a few new game modes that are interesting. There's a new tile set with the cities that looks quite nice. Overall, it's I think a nice addition. I just would love to see ECM on an Atlas DDC. That would make my day.
All right, so yeah, there's a lot of bits and pieces. I think the Javelin is an okay addition. It's at least as I said, with the meta of the game, starting off you have lights and mediums, and basically all you're doing is upgrading to have a lance of all mediums, and then heavies, assaults, etc. So the light game, you aren't actually that interested in picking up light mechs for the most part. You're maybe wanting to upgrade your Spider and Locust, but you really just want to upgrade them with mediums. So the Javelin, on average, all it does is make the early game harder, because instead of the 2 medium laser Spider, you have the 4 medium laser Javelin, you have the SRM-12 Javelin. And for me, at least, I've done some matches where the Javelin span has been kind of crazy. Like I faced 2 lances of light mechs, and 6 of them were Javelins, or with half of them SRMs, half of them were medium lasers. And it was a tough fight. It was an interesting fight, but yeah, it used to be a lot easier. The Javelin just makes the early game a little bit harder, which is fine. Early game, all the mechs have a lot of agility. All the mechs can't aim. So it's just a game of everyone's sort of spamming shots and the enemy stock mechs having so little armor that they fall apart from any hit. It's okay. The Raven is an interesting one with its ECM, the new implementation of ECM and somewhat equal probe. I like the original marketing material. I always made fun of this. They said the Raven has the lightweight electronic warfare equipment. And I was like, lightweight? In lore, it's 7.5 tons. Is that lightweight?
It's basically a walking ECM at that point.
Yeah, and in game it is indeed 7.5 tons. So it's a 35 tonner stock engine, standard engine stock. It really has a limited pod space available to it because of its electronic warfare equipment. But how does it ECM? ECM is incredibly potent. It almost, if you're underneath the bubble, because I think you haven't actually played it yet, TTB, right?
Nope, I haven't played it yet.
Okay, it projects a bubble and everybody gets like a stealth token. And as long as you have a stealth token, you cannot be targeted.
So basically, it renders all the long-range learning from additional enemy lances completely useless. Same thing goes
All long
for
range,
autocannons from Jägermechs and whatnot. That is pretty potent.
all ranged options, the enemy can't target you. Medium lasers, SRMs, AC-20s, AC-10s, as long as they are not within the bubble and you have a stealth token on you, you cannot be shot at.
What about sensor lock?
Sensor lock does remove one stealth token, but the AI is quite stupid and often doesn't take sensor lock or use sensor lock. The AI has not been built to actually properly so to explain a bit more, if your mech has a stealth token and it fires, it loses a stealth token. And if an enemy mech moves within the ECM bubble, all stealth tokens are temporarily rescinded until that mech is deleted. So the ECM is you really with at least PvE. Whenever the enemy has a turn, they will take it. So their light mechs in their initiative phase will always move. If you reserve, so they will always move forward and can't shoot you because you have stealth tokens. So all you need to do is reserve to the very last initiative phase,
And then
shoot
kill
them, and then the next turn you get all your stealth tokens back, and they can't shoot you.
So basically, you have a mobile trap. That's like a mobile Venus flytrap, and the enemy mechs will just run into it. That sounds really nice. Here's my question though: if you've experienced the gameplay with the ECM Raven, is the ECM Raven worth to take on later missions where you're fighting against lots of big ass enemy lances consisting of heavies and assaults over another assault mech?
The sweet spot, I would say, is obviously against heavies, because when you get to the last initiative phase, if there's 8 assaults and your lance, you reserve all the way to the end, your Raven gets 2 stealth tokens because it's the ECM carrier, so it can actually shoot and remain stealthed. So you can reserve all the way to the final phase. You can have the Raven shoot, their assault mech moves, and then you have to reveal your mechs if you want to actually start shooting the enemy. So against Lancers of Assault mechs, you're actually in the end just going to be turning into trading blows. Or you have to rely on the Raven to slowly kill them with 3 medium lasers.
Yeah. Basically, you will end up trading, and that's my point or my fear, where I'm going like, if the ECM is not available on an assault mech at that stage in the game, I'm not going to use that. What I would like to see from Battletech, and that's just a personal opinion, but personal thought, is I would like to make use of that weight limit, and instead of bringing 4 mechs at 100 tons each, I would like to be able to bring 6 mechs, 3 assaults and then 2 mediums or something like that. Like maybe be able to mix it up, because then you would bring a Raven at 35 tons, and you could add another mech in that would be interesting. For example, I don't know, a Shadowhawk or whatever. Like you would have 5 mechs on the field instead of 4. That would be fine with me, because otherwise you won't be able to win.
It would be nice that the gameplay would be balanced such that you could take a similar amount of tonnage as the enemy, and the enemy was actually competent, rather than it always just being you swarmed. Because the thing with the current implementation of ECM is it turns the game into easy mode all the way until the final 5-star missions, the 5 skull missions. At least from my experience, the idea is that I just take 3 heavies and the Raven, or now I have a King Crab, 2 heavies and the Raven, and if they don't have more than 1 assault, they all just move forward or waddle around confusedly because they can't shoot me, and then I just have it's a turkey shoot. I'm just doing game after game after game where I'm just gunning them down and taking no return fire, because the ECM is incredibly strong when the player abuses it.
Oh, looks like it's something I need to try and abuse.
Yeah. To give context, though, of course, the thing to get the Raven ECM, it at least is you can take it in the new flashpoints that they've implemented. Those flashpoints do not spawn until you are done with the campaign. So this cheesy mechanic will not appear until you are done with the campaign, which at what point you're already done with the game. So for the most part, ECM and the Raven is for career mode. And for career mode, they make it so that the mission showing off the Hatchet Man and the mission showing off the Raven are the first ones that spawn.
And they're definitely worth getting then. I mean, I have played a little bit of the Hatchet Man. It's interesting, but again, these mechs only work while you are within those weight brackets, and as soon as the enemy gets access to heavier mechs with more weapons, you also have to have heavier mechs and more weapons, or you're going to get shot to hell.
Or yeah, that's the thing though. The Raven changes the entire game. The Raven makes it a turkey shoot, so that no matter how heavy they are, your Lance of Light mechs could just wait until the last initiative phase and slowly burn them down with medium lasers.
and
The
then
only
run away.
times you can't, yeah, the only times you don't need, running away does sort of play a factor, but the AI is not programmed to really counter ECM. They don't know what to do. It's a bit like on some maps, there's like a huge mountain, and you can use jump jets to jump onto the other side at the top of the mountain, and the AI will move towards you because they know roughly where you are. But then they don't know how to jump over the mountain. They don't know how to reach you because they can't just sprint over there. And so they just sort of mill about, running backwards and forwards in a confused way. And if you have one mech with sensor lock back in the day, you would sensor lock them and learn them slowly to death. Whereas now you could do that for free. Just you bring a Raven, you just stand on top of a hill that they can't really run up to, run up the side of, and they can't figure out how to get within the bubble. And even on flat plains, if you have a whole bunch of assault mechs standing next to the Raven, they don't want to charge the assault mechs because it's scary. So instead, they just stand in front of the assault mechs whilst they're getting shot.
Well, that sounds healthy. There's nothing healthier than standing in front of, let's say, a double AC-20 King Crab, which, by the way, can fire without incurring Ghost Heat, thank you very much, and destroys targets straight through CT.
Yeah, so I've actually been taking a lot of brawler loadouts. So the idea is you just move your lance lance forward, and they have a ridiculous close range firepower, and the enemy just don't want to get too close, and because they can't get too close, they just get shredded.
Yeah, especially if you take loadouts with double AC-20s combined with SRM-6s or so, you can get to Alpha Strike firepowers of, like, I don't know, like 400-ish easily. And that is enough to basically destroy almost every mech with a single alpha to the CT. But the thing is, you have to do it, because if you don't do it, the enemy team is always going to have, or in most cases will have, more mechs than you. So you have to shred through them as quickly as possible, or you're just gonna get overwhelmed through a war of attrition.
Yep. Normally that would be the case, but with the Raven, now you could just cheese the entire game until they're all assault mechs. So yeah, the Raven, my big theory is at least that the ECM would be implemented like it's sort of in the lore, that it makes electronics kind of hard to use. But the thing is, in this early part of the timeline, electronic weapon, they don't really rely much on advanced targeting systems or anything like that. So ECM doesn't really counter very much. But the way they've implemented it, ECM is tantamount to stealth. That they can see the Lance standing as a blob, firing lasers at them, and they're just like, I can't target him. I can't just point my weapons in their direction and press the trigger. I need my computer to do the job for me.
Yeah, it's not like in the lore that they just use their sticks to point their arms and their weapons at targets and then just shoot them, or just hit them with their melee abilities or whatever, or just hit them with their arms if they have arms or whatnot. No, that's not possible. Or things like, I don't know, using the jump jets, using self-destruct and bailing at the same time. Like, these kinds of moves, of course, it would be hard to implement, but would be a lot of fun. But long story short, you can't just account for everything. Overall, I would say it's a nice add-on, but it hasn't really changed the game in a significant way in terms of the enjoyment of it, or like me wanting to play it more and more. I'm actually personally more curious about things like Rokne, where things are getting spicier and getting modded up, as opposed to this change right here, which feels like it's a nice small content addition. But it doesn't affect you until a certain point in the game. Either when you're playing campaign, then it's not going to affect you until the campaign's over, or if you're going through the whole career mode or whatever it's called. You might have it at the beginning and then you can cheese your way through. But I think it's okay. But that's it.
I'm not sure. Like the thing is with adding this kind of tactics to the game is, it does mean you can just go easy mode and cheese the entire game. You can select all the hardest. It's just like, as long as I have the Raven, it can slowly kill things with 3 medium lasers because the AI is too stupid to counter your moves. It just doesn't. It can't work around this new mechanic. And it's not a great addition for PvE, honestly.
Yeah, people
The
won't care about that.
javelin just hurts the PvE aspect. For me, I spawned all the way in Tyrian space, and the mission for the Raven is all the way on the opposite side of the map on the Marek space. So it took me forever to get over to the Raven. And not only that, the Raven mission is an easy low skull mission, but the planet it appears on is a very high skull planet. Luckily, I didn't know that the Raven was so overpowered, and I should have just gone there straight away and cleared all those 4 or 5 skull missions with the Raven. But my mindset was, of course, I'm coming over with mediums, and suddenly I have to fight heavies if I want to do the missions on the planet, and I'm not going to be able to do it because the Raven's going to be useless. But it turned out the Raven was God, and that I should have just relied on the Raven.
Little did you know that you could literally arrive at that point with a Raven and a couple of mechanics, and then just stealthily dismantle all the enemy mechs, and you leave that from that planet with heavies and assaults. GG. Campaign's over. Thank you very much.
Yeah. There are quite a few other changes. There are 3 more vehicles added to the game. However, I think they're only for Flashpoint specific urban warfare maps or urban warfare missions, but I've never seen them. In fact, my entire objective with the recent playthrough is to not find the Raven or the Javelin. I've seen plenty of the Javelin. I've seen enough of the Javelin, in fact, and I'm kind of sick of killing everything with the Raven, but I have not seen a single one of the new enemy vehicles.
Yeah, but they're also not that memorable, right? Like, if I look at enemy vehicles, there are 4 vehicles that come to mind that raise the alarm clock. There is the SRM carrier, which has like, I don't know, 10 SRM6s or so, ridiculous amount. Then there's the LRM carrier, same thing but with LRMs. Then you've got the Demolisher tanks with the double AC-20s, and then you've got the Shrek PPC Panzers with their triple PPCs. These are the ones I watch out for, and the rest is just like, yeah, that tickle.
The Gallant comes with an AC-10. It's a 70-ton vehicle. It's okay. The more crucial things, though, is one of them has ECM. One of them is an ECM. And that is actually at least a thing a player could worry about, is that the enemy having their own broken ECM mechanics. And one thing I haven't mentioned is, of course, there's another vehicle, and the Raven both can use the Beagle Probe function. The Beagle Probe makes a small area around it. It's not got the same range as sensor range, but in that whole area around the Raven or this vehicle that I've never seen, it can press the Beagle Probe button and it will sensor lock all of them. Sensor lock, of course, removes 2 evasion pips. It makes them visible to your team, and I think it does a aim debuff of -1.
Yeah, it interferes with the sensors. Yeah.
Yep. Firing the Beagle Probe costs something like 50 heat, 45 heat or something. It basically cooks your Raven. It brings it from no heat bar to max heat bar. So it's a terrible idea using the probe. I've never really actually wanted to use the probe. Like I tried it out and I was like, wow, that range is terrible. And sensor lock is nice, but I'm only a lance of 3 other mechs. It's as the same issue with just marking one target with sensor lock. You're spending your entire turn doing it. But oddly enough, the Beagle Probe is just making sensor lock look awesome. Like, at least sensor lock doesn't cook your mech. It's not like firing 2 PPCs or whatever at the same time. It's the Beagle Probe, the way it's implemented, is almost worthless, and ECM it's almost completely broken.
Oh, there you have it. So what's your verdict on the whole package that is Urban Warfare?
So Urban Warfare, or at least in this same patch, they do implement a few other changes. When you go to a new planet, instead of just 4 missions spawning, 8 missions spawn. This is really good for grinding things out, or
quality of life.
Quality of life. If you're friends with some factions and hated by others, you have a much greater chance of having missions that you actually want to play, rather than going to a planet and finding, oh look, all of them that spawned were pirate missions, and I am hated by the pirates. So I guess I have to reload the save and hope I roll for better next time. This time, though, you can play through a lot more nicely. The new urban environments are interesting. A big issue I have is, at least after they removed the ability to shoot buildings outside of combat, outside of the turn-based phases, you cannot prep the battlefields anymore. And urban battlefields, unless you're near a park, are really lacking in cover. And you get this really awkward scenario where you finally get into sensor range of the and you have to very quickly try and start clearing buildings to get cover for your men. Whereas before, you could actually, clear buildings. Removing that feature is really detrimental in urban warfare.
Yeah.
Quality of life improvements, being able to filter on the map, seeing what the skull missions are. If you want a 2-skull planet, you just click the option and it shows you all the 2-skull planets nearby. Really helpful. Also, same for biomes. You can filter for biomes. If you want to try and find an urban warfare map, a place with urban battle environments, just click the drop down and you'll be shown immediately where they are.
Yep, I think those are nice changes. Although we all know that do not trust the skulls; they will lead you astray.
Yes. The new mission types. Have you ever done any of the 3-way battles?
Yes, I actually have done one of the 3-way battles, one of my latest videos, and it's very interesting. Like you have to do an objective while 2 forces battle it out between themselves, but you also have to protect your own base. What I ended up doing was I dropped in an assault lance and I just literally killed everything. I don't think you're supposed to do that because there's quite a lot of material on the field. For example, I also stumbled into a weapons exercise between 2 factions. So the Organs and the Taurians were doing a weapons exercise together, and all of a sudden they all turn on me. So these are interesting missions, but if you don't have enough tonnage in the field, that's again why I'm saying don't trust the skulls, you are gonna get demolished.
Yeah, the 3-way missions, all the ones I played at least, the other 2 factions are hostile to one another. So you can always just withdraw really far back and they will duke it out. And at the end, you have horribly beat up mechs to just mop up. So yeah, if you charge into the middle of those 2 lances, you're going to be creamed. And the game instead just encourages you to run far away and perhaps, slightly change. Like if one lance is winning over the other one, you even the odds out a bit by suddenly shooting the winning side.
Yeah, you trim the enemy mechs a little bit, like a little volley here and there can help quite a bit.
These missions are interesting. They're allowed because it's a 3-way mission. They can actually put much heavier mechs on the opposing sides because they're fighting one another. You always have the option of just hiding and therefore allowing the enemy to give you free salvage at the end of the day. So I actually quite like them. It adds more spice to the games. I did like a 2.5-skull mission or 2-skull mission, and one lance was sort of like a catapult and a king crab, and the other lance was like mediums and heavy and a light. And I managed to cockpit the king crab so much I got all 3 pieces of salvage from. So from a 2-skull mission, I got a king crab. I just jumped to the end game in one go. So now I have a king crab with a hastily thrown on SRM-24 4 medium lasers standing under the ECM bubble of my Raven, just screaming everything that gets close by. Have you done any of the attack and defend missions?
Yes, there was one of those that I mentioned where I had to attack an enemy base and defend my own base at the same time, which was quite a bit away. But there were 2 different factions in between that were still warring against each other, and one dropped in later. It was very weird, and it gets very complicated. I haven't found the right way to play these yet. My way of playing these right now is just see target, kill target, move on.
Yeah, the majority of the attack and defend missions I've personally done have all been just my lance versus the enemy. Like I haven't done that one that you did, and I think my basic rule, when you say do not trust the skull ratings, the attack and defend, you double the skull rating.
Yeah.
If it says it's 2 skulls, it's actually a full skull mission, and you should be prepared for that. And oddly enough, at least for me, I got the majority of attack and defend missions on the lunar biome, in space.
Yeah,
so,
the one we don't want to have because you're going to overheat like crazy, especially if you run weapon builds like you probably do as well, which are very hot because you just have to fire them once or twice at most and enemies die.
I usually actually run really balanced bracket builds on my things, but they do still struggle with inefficient heat sinks, of course. There's no cover on the lunar biome. And some of the missions are fiendishly difficult. Like you have a lance blocking the base, a reinforcing lance for when you get near the base, and 3 waves, 3 separate lances that spawn in the middle of the map
attacking
that
your
charge
base.
your base.
Yep.
Yes. In total, you can get, 5 to 6 lances of enemy mechs against your single lance. Normally, the game only throws 2 to 3 lances at you. This is throwing possibly up to double the number of
Yeah.
enemy lances.
But
And
that's-
there's an enemy base.
And that's the point where I would like the option to just drop more mechs and more tonnage, because if the enemy can drop 5 lances, why can't I?
Yeah. And the thing with the reinforcement lancers is the first one drops about 4 turns or 5 turns into the match. It takes me about 5 turns to destroy 2 enemy lancers. In a
Yep.
lunar biome, that is pretty good because the heat management is terrible. I have no cover, and they're smacking me really hard, and I have 6 lancers to go through. So it's you could sort of try to kamikaze through them, but you get to the annoying issue that then they spawn behind you and run straight towards your base.
Yep, because you didn't tag them, they will go to your base and they will shoot it.
Exactly. So I think this, just like target acquisition as a new game mode, is sort of the new escort or incursion to Battletech.
Yeah.
These new game modes just ratchet up the difficulty to ridiculous degrees, and at least in this case, you aren't on a time limit. You can actually, you just have to duke it out with twice the normal forces. And this new DLC, of course, has added the Raven, so you could just sit under a bubble and enjoy the turkey shoot of 6 enemy lancers. But it just doesn't feel right that I'm relying on such cheesy tactics. And if you don't have the DLC, I think you still have the game mode to play, and you don't have the cheesy Raven to rely on. And this goes as well for campaign mode.
Well, I don't have the Raven. I just have assault mechs. Like classic TTB. TTB runs assault mechs, period.
When you get to assault mechs in Battletech, though, that's end game. Once you've got there, there's nowhere else ready to go, and there's not much point in playing too much anymore. So, at least for me, that's the thing that I will get a 2-skull mission, and I'm fighting 6 lancers with my lance of mediums because I haven't got assault mechs yet.
By the way, did you run into another issue with the new maps, and that is with all those mechs on the battlefield, loading times and especially like performance goes down quite a bit?
Yeah, the urban battlefields, my FPS is not very good, and I usually am able to kill the new lancers as fast as they appear. So I don't have too many mechs on the field, but yeah, there are some performance issues with so many smoking corpses around.
And are you aware whether they finally fixed the issue of if you have too many save games, your loading times just for not loading normal missions and whatnot increase exponentially as well?
I'm not familiar, and I'm not sure if I don't follow all the little quality of life changes, because they did do a patch and that did address a lot of the little bits and pieces, but it's really hard to keep up with all the bits and pieces.
I mean, if you're having trouble with extremely long loading times for your maps, or for your save games, what I recommend you do is you go into your save game folder and you just make a backup copy of like everything but the last 3 or latest 3 save games and put it somewhere else, and that used to speed up the loading speed by a factor of 2 or 3. For whatever reason, it just slows it down insanely if you have more than, I don't know, 10, 15 saves.
Yeah, because my loading times are quite long, particularly since I have to keep reloading every time I arrive on a new planet. I have to keep reloading until I get a good, decent distribution of mission types.
You're safe scumming. No.
Yeah. Well, it's just so I don't rival the planet. It was an absolute waste of time.
Yep. Well, that happens.
One thing to note, at least with the attack and defend mission, is the AI feels really, really simply programmed. Like the new lancers that appear will just book it straight towards your base, and even if you're standing right next to them, they will ignore you. This kind of leads to the funny situation where if you sprint towards their spawn location and are able to keep up, at least, like sometimes they spawn locusts and that huge pain in the ass, but you could just backstab them to death.
Yep. I think they have the same AI that they use on the lances that spawn that are going after your escort targets, where if you don't tag them, they will just go blindly for the escorts and completely ignore the big-ass mechs standing in their way.
So you have ample opportunity to just backstab these mechs, and therefore, if you have 2 really good high firepower mechs, each of them could do targeted rear shot center torsos and just absolutely cream, the lancers in 2 turns. I mean, it's 2 turns until the next lance appears, but at least you creep them really, really quickly. So there is that exploit, but it just doesn't feel. It doesn't feel right, if you get my drift. That
Yeah.
know the enemy are just automatons that will rush straight towards the base. It's just sort of so stupid that, oh look, an enemy heavy lance has appeared and they landed right on top of us. Oh, don't worry, the Atlas pilot's just going to walk slowly towards the base. We can just core him out from behind. Yeah, that feels realistic.
Yeah, I think in this case it's I don't know. I think it's BattleTech itself. The game was a really nice game, a lot of fun. But the add-on is that this specific game type or this specific way of just throwing more mechs into it, but not having the mechs be more intelligent and also not make more sense. Yeah, that's why I'm not too keen on it. That's why I'm actually more keen on trying out, as I said, mods like Roadtech, because they change the way the game is played. Whereas this is just more of the same, and then no huge changes that would like make me really excited.
Yeah, in the end, other than the abusable ECM mechanics, it feels like a very token addition. It's just sort of a nice little quality of life improvement, more stuff here and there and whatnot. The last thing, at least, they advertised, oh, hey, city maps will have coolant trucks and flammable things that you can shoot and this, that, and the other. And I've never seen or really had a chance to implement those kind of mechanics.
Well,
have you seen anything like that?
Nope, but it might have been canned due to just performance constraints, because the engine doesn't handle more than 8 mechs on this playing field at the same time very well. It feels like it runs into bottlenecks very quickly.
Oh, and I just remembered, of course, there's one last change, a big change for the mechanics: stray shots.
That actually I have noticed quite a bit. That actually forces you to not group your mechs together as tightly as you might like to, because stray shots, especially with missiles or whatnot, it can get quite funny where your mechs get less evasive very quickly.
Yeah, I really like the stray shot mechanic because the game has always sort of evolved into forming your team into a blob, standing on cover, and just raining fire down as a fire base. But now you actually have to spread your mechs out, and that means the small patches of cover are less abusable.
Yeah.
Though now I have a Raven ECM bubble, I don't need cover. I'm not getting shot anymore. I can just set up base anywhere. But it's really cool, regardless, because particularly urban warfare, even if your mech misses, it's going to hit a building, and the buildings have like 60 HP. So there's hilarious times where you're firing at an enemy mech and buildings around them just crumble to the ground.
Well, that's cool. That's how it's supposed to be, right?
Yeah, it looks awesome that the enemy hordes are charging at you, and you fire at them, and you're still even if because they're so closely grouped up together, you're actually able to hit a lot of them even if you roll a miss because of the stray shot mechanic. So I really like it. It really adds a lot more dynamicism to the game. It's not just sort of like like a tabletop game like Warhammer 40,000, like there's a giant blob of orcs that takes up half of the field, and your Imperial Guardsmen I see to hit if I can hit with my las gun. Oh, whoops, I missed the giant blob of orcs. It was just I just fired directly down into the ground or into the sky. I just couldn't figure out where to aim.
You know what what the ECM actually does, and I think that's a fitting comparison for people who are a little bit more into the Mechwarrior lore and the Mechwarrior novels. It turns all your enemies into Yorinaga Kurita, and it turns you into Morgan Kell. No matter what, like he can't shoot you. No matter what he tries, he doesn't hit. In this case, he can't lock, but this is the closest comparison I got in there. But yeah, as you said, nice little add-on, but doesn't like it. The impact, especially in late game, is weird or not there.
I do like, as you say, the evasion charges. If you accidentally get a stray shot on another mech, it not just hurts them, it also removes evasion charges. So if you got a lance of lightnecks all sprinting around together, they're actually going to get lots of stray shots, and their evasion's not going to count, and their evasion's going to go down very quickly. Like you're giving the enemy multi-target for free sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. But it's also true for the enemy, right? You can get a lot of nice stray shots if you use multi-target freely with Lerms or something.
Yeah, the most annoying thing is when you you get a stray shot and a single LRM hits your cockpit or the next nearby mech.
Oh yeah, that's the best thing ever, especially since your guys go to go to the infirmary or go to death if they have too many cockpit hits or if the cockpit gets destroyed. By the way, the cockpit destroyed mechanics, I don't know. I don't like them as much, or the cockpit hit mechanics, because it feels like your guys or your pilots will be incurring a lot more head hits than the enemies for whatever reason. And I would like the chance for pilots to die if the cockpit gets destroyed not to be as high. It feels a little bit weird that it's always a guaranteed death always.
It's kind of like in D&D or whatever, you roll 20, you get a crit. The thing is, if you're a team of 4 versus 8 or so enemies, they're going to be rolling 20s twice as often as you are.
Yeah.
And in this case, the enemies, it doesn't matter about whether they're going to the infirmary, because in the end they're going to die, or you're going to withdraw from the field, and it doesn't, there's no permanence to their
there's no consequence
injuries.
for that. Exactly.
Yeah. So crits against players, having players' arms or hands or whatever lopped off with crits, something like that, is way more impactful than just lopping off a finger of an opponent.
They're like my pilots. I really dislike losing people. That's also the reason why I've never tried like XCOM Long War, Iron Man playthroughs or whatever. I have a huge problem with losing people.
It takes so long grinding up the pilots and whatnot as well.
Yep.
It's a lot of investment to get these guys to max skills and everything, and having them killed by cockpit shots is a terrible feeling.
Yeah, especially if the enemy just doesn't have especially if it's like an unlucky shot. And I get it, it can happen, right? It's something that would happen in warfare and whatnot. It makes sense, but you're always going up against the odds in this game. So it would be nice if it didn't happen that often, or if the mechanics were in a way that you go to the infirmary for 2 months or whatever and whatnot. The good thing is your player character actually can't die. I don't know if you know that, but he can't die. He just goes to the infirmary.
Yeah. AC-20 shot to the cockpit. I'll rest it off.
Walk it off.
Yeah. You aren't really so much of a character as just omnipresent being, and your physical body just got smushed. It will slowly recorporalize together as long as you have the right medical facilities.
You're basically a bioderm clone.
They have added in a whole bunch more events, which is really nice. Because the thing with the game, those events that happen whilst you're going from planet to planet, you get used to them fairly quickly. Whereas this one, I had like one character who was a pirate, and somebody sort of informed me about it. I confronted him about him. He said, "Yep, I was a pirate, but I've changed my ways." Then I think there was another event that triggered for him, and he proved he was a dependable pilot. And then there was like a fire that went off in the Argo, and he was the one who took a fire extinguisher and proved he was actually brave. So it was just kind of cool getting all these little stories that made one of my pilots turn out to be a really decent fella. And I was like, oh hey, that's better than the same events all the time.
Yep. I also had especially like the burger event all the time. But I had an interesting experience as well with one of my main pilots, and it was Behemoth, and she got like the offer to join another mercenary outfit and whatever. And I gave a friendly answer of like, hey, just weigh the options, think about it and whatnot. And it's like, boom, your most experienced, most tanky pilot is just gone.
Yeah, I had that one as well.
Which for me went like, okay, yeah, I'm going to reload this because this is just stupid. Like, what? You can't just make her a better offer or something, pay some money? No, she's just gone. No.
Yeah, the phrasing of that one, the answers are basically, yes, you can go, but give me 200k. No, yes, you can go, don't give me 200k, or no, don't go.
Yeah.
But they're all phrased as just, say she could go with your blessing, say she should consider it, but you don't want the money, or advise her about the strengths of your own company or something.
Yeah. It's like
all...
if you try to be nice and friendly, you lose. But if you're a dick about it and handle it the one way that you would never want your boss to handle anything, then they stay.
there's no take backsies. I think it's just the issue there. That they say, okay, well, I feel like I should go, and you say, oh, well, I would really like you to stay. Here's amount of money. So it's like, okay, I was nice, and they feel like they should go. But I don't know. For me, at least, it felt really dumb in the way that my morale in the company is really high. They're one of my most experienced pilots. Like, they've been with me for months, and every month are paid generously. It's like,
Yep.
what kind of pay are you going after, love?
Yeah, exactly. Like this doesn't make sense. So, it's interesting, yeah, but again, some of them don't make much sense. So, I could do without them because I don't want my most experienced pilot just to be gone all of a sudden for no reason without you having any kind of impact on it just because you gave a wrong answer. It's kind of like have you ever played Dragon Age 2?
Yeah. Not that much. No.
Long story short, if you're too nice to the mage in your party for one time too many, it leads to instant butt sex.
Yeah, I mean, I had that in Dragon Age Origins with, I was kind of nice to Morgana, and she was really pissed at me. At the end, it was like, we should have been buddies, and you should have been lovers. I was like, I was just being friendly. You're getting the wrong messages, love.
Yeah, exactly that. So that's kind of the thing that's happening here, where you're trying to be nice, and it's just like, okay, here's horrible consequences without any way of bailing out of them. Great. That doesn't feel good.
Have you ever played FTL?
Yes, a little bit.
Yeah, because that one, you can have events where crewmates do get killed, but the thing is that's a roguelike, or whatever you call it, where you do a run, and it's not a very super long campaign. But with Battletech losing, I think that's why we're having an issue with it in Battletech. It's just that your crew members can be many, tens, hundreds of hours invested to actually get them up to max skill. And you click the wrong option, particularly like on IanDresarie mode, if you haven't seen the event before, and they're gone. Like that's effectively the pilot's been killed. That is a really bad event. Like other events, like if there's pirates and they demand money off you and you say fuck off and they attack you, you get like injuries to your pilots. They don't even kill your pilots. But this event where you just sort of say, why, consider your options, and they go, right, I'm off. Bye.
Yep.
I was like, wow, you just effectively, from my gameplay mechanics perspective, killed off.
You killed the pilot.
You killed off the pilot.
Yep.
It would be cool if they said they have, gone, like if they had left to go to the other place for a short period of time, like they said they're going to try out the outfit and this will have lasting consequences. You're like, oh, okay, I'm paying one pilot now, but they might come back, or there will be lasting consequences that I'll be in good standing with, this faction later on. But it's nothing like that. At least I don't think it is. I'm not sure.
Oh, we'll see. We'll see. But yeah, that's one of the worst experiences I've had in BattleTech ever. Apart from people just dying for no reason because they get plonked onto the head a little bit too often, or spending insane amounts of time in the infirmary. But this is the one that felt the worst.
Yeah, and yeah, but on the average, at least, I've had a much better experience with the events, other than that one.
The
I'm not
problem
sure
is the good ones don't stick in your mind, but the bad ones will forever.
All right, I think that more or less gives us a show. Do you have any final thoughts on Battletech update?
No, I just have some final thoughts on NWO and PGI. So, I mean, sometimes we're quite harsh on our criticism, specifically me, since I'm playing the game for so long, hours upon hours, matches upon matches, hundreds of matches every month. You start to notice a lot of things that aren't polished or that are just a little bit broken or problematic and have never been fixed over years. And so it's important to note that while the product that we have is not finished, not polished, and not perfect in any way or form, it's still important that we continue to support PGI and to continue to wish them the best and to continue to try our darndest to support them in any way or form, because without them we wouldn't have MWO and we wouldn't have this game and we wouldn't have MW5. So even if it's not everything that we ever dreamed and hoped for. I mean, in the end, without them, it wouldn't be here in the first place. So we got to give them credit where credit's due. Of course, that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be criticized, because we're paying money for this stuff, and if you want them, if they want us to invest our money, then they need to give us our money's worth back, right? So long story short is, what I'm saying is, don't be one-sided in your criticism. Don't join in on the PGI bashing train, because there's enough people on that already. Try and keep it friendly, try and keep it civilized, and try and keep it fair, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think at least, whilst I have plenty of my criticisms, in the end, at least, my biggest thing is I want to always advocate for the return of those old fun quirks and things that would actually have a meaningful impact, that would make mostly irrelevant mechs interesting and unique. So for me, it's not like, mediocre Kodiak increases to the agility. PGI is so stupid. I'm just more of my opinion is just like, hey, the Kodiak 5 of those 11 energy hard points, give it 10% heat gen, something like that. Just make it so that it's a decent energy mech that's worth taking. And for me, that's my preference for trying to get a positive spin. We want to not just tell PGI why they're screwing up, but tell PGI where we want the game to go.
Yeah, just give ideas on how to improve it, and then hopefully somebody takes it up and thinks about it, and just thinks about it. And then if they come to the conclusion that that might be a good choice, go ahead and try it.
They were really, they made mistakes like the Alston with the 3 heat scale limit quirk for any PPCs, and they're like terrified, oh no, this might break the game. And no, all it did was actually make that mech really interesting. One of the few cases where PGI has made a mech interesting in the recent times.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've got a few people on my Discord, some of my viewers, who just love the hell out of this awesome, and they just almost exclusively play it just because it has this PPC heat scale limit thing. Same thing, for example, when we were building the Highlander 2C with the triple ERPPC loadout, which we thought, okay, this might be interesting. Hey, it's a great fun mech to play. So these things added a lot to the game. WX 20 on the Nightstar and on the Boiler, really nice. Or on the what's it called, the Hunchback 2C, really nice additions. More of that, please. Yep. Where is the King Crab with double AC20?
All right, guys, that was the First Circuit Podcast, episode 91,000.
I apologize for all the mechs not killed in this episode.